Assalamu alaikum, dear brothers and sisters, the followers of ALwaali channels. Today we are going to host Dr. Aasar Safar in a lecture and to discuss the Islamic time and date system. We are going for many definitions, what's meant by Islamic day, Islamic month, Islamic year, and what's its relation for various activities. So welcome Dr. Aasar. So we're going to start now.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد خاتم النبيين وتمام عدة المرسلين وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين وأصحابه المنتجبين. Assalamu alaikum everyone. Yes, inshallah we'll be talking about the concept of time and date and how Islam dealt with it. Islam is a religion, like a practical religion, so that's why it's tried to or encourage Muslims to mingle with life, with other people, with the environment and so on. And that's why a lot of the Islamic activity actually is linked to a time and or date. In this ayah, for example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned specifically that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created day and night, and then give the reason for doing this, that it is so that we know the number of years and the account of time. So there's nothing by chance, there's nothing random. So this is done purposefully and for a good reason. This topic will be presented over three sessions. So the first session will be talking briefly about the concept of calendar, the concept of like the definition or the Gregorian and the Islamic or Hijri year. Then we'll talk about the month, and basically today we'll be mainly focusing on the lunar month and its both forms, in its natural or astronomical lunar month and the Islamic or Hijri lunar month. Next week, inshallah, we'll be talking about the day, and we'll be dissecting the day and night cycle, and then we see how various daily prayers falls into each part of this into each part of the day or night. And we'll also talk about the best time for doing salat, and briefly talk about the nawafil or the recommended prayers. In the last session, we'll be talking about eclipses. Eclipses are very interesting phenomena, but it has relevance for us as Muslims. So we'll talk about eclipses, and then briefly comment about these days everybody has got a smartphone, everybody has got loads of apps that tell us the times of salat. So we'll just talk about how to deal with these and how accurate they are and how reliable they are, and then briefly talk about what a modern calendar should look like. So we'll start today talking about the calendar and the year. This will be very brief. Then we talk about the month, the solar month, and then we'll focus on the lunar month, and as I said, in its both forms, the natural and the Islamic lunar months. And then we'll have a brief and quick look at the relationship between the Hijri and the Gregorian dates. All these topics are not meant to be purely scientific. It's not purely religious either. It's just practical points that basically I learned most of this myself the hard way, and I'm just sharing my experience with you. So let's start with the calendar. Of course, if anyone is interested, you can go on Wikipedia and you'll find fascinating information about these topics, but here we'll just be talking very quickly and briefly. There are mainly two types of calendars. The one that depends on the movement of the moon, which is called lunar calendars, and those that depends on the movement of the sun, like the Gregorian calendar. There is another type of calendar, it's called lunisolar, which is basically a lunar calendar. But because the lunar year is shorter than the solar year, every 2 or 3 years they add an extra month to keep the dates in sync. So these are roughly the common types of calendars, and there's lots and lots more types of calendars. As I said, if you are interested, you can have a look. Just a very brief comment about some history. Timekeeping started more than 12,000 years ago. That's 10,000 years before Christ. At the New Stone Age, they found evidence of some form of a calendar at that time in the Middle East, and then from there it spread to the rest of the world. The Roman calendar was reformed by Julius Caesar. That's why it's called the Julian calendar, and that was established in the year 45 before Christ. And it is solar, and it's basically came with the concept of the leap year to keep the date in sync. And then the current Gregorian calendar is actually a refinement of the Julian calendar and was introduced in the year 1582. These are the Gregorian months. We're all familiar with it. Just a quick comment of interest. There are three. We are still talking about the solar year, which is the Gregorian year. We have these four dates in a Gregorian year, which are the 21st, it's either 20 or 21st of March, June, September, and December. These are very unique dates because the one in March and the one in September are called the equinox. And what characterizes those ones is that the day and night are equal, like 12 hours of day and 12 hours of night. Today is the 25th of September, so 4 or 5 days ago we had that equinox, the spring. Of course, that's in the southern part of the hemisphere. If you are in the northern part, it is the same, but the names are different, but it's still equinox. The one in June is called the winter solstice, and this is the shortest day in the year. And the one in December is called the summer solstice, and it is the longest day in the year. These are just fun facts. You might get across these terms so you know what they mean. Now the Hijri calendar, again a brief run of what is a Hijri calendar. It started by the Hijra of the Prophet ﷺ, the immigration from Mecca to Medina, and that was in the year 622 after the birth of Christ. And though the actual Hijra happened in Rabi' al-Awwal, but it was considered in the first month of Muharram for some historical reason. I won't go into the details. You can research it yourself. So currently, the Hijri or the Islamic year starts on the 1st of Muharram. And just like the Gregorian year, the Hijri calendar again is made of 12 months, and these are the names. I hope that everyone is familiar with these names: Muharram, Safar, Rabi' Awal, Rabi' Thani, Jamad al-Ula, Jamad al-Akhira, then Rajab, Sha'ban, and the month of Ramadan, then Shawwal, and Dhul Qa'dah, and Dhul Hijjah. So this is a quick run of the calendar and a very brief comparison between the Hijri calendar and or the Hijri year and the Gregorian year. Next, we'll be talking about the month. And again, very briefly, we talk about the solar months. There are 12 months. We're all familiar with them. 7 of them are 31 days. 4 of them are 30 days. The month of February is 28 days. But every 4 years, we get a leap year where February becomes 29 days. Just make sure that you don't get born on the 29th of February. Otherwise, your birthday will be once every 4 years.
Lucky person.
Yeah. The solar year is 365 days. In reality, it's 365 and quarter of a day. And as we said, every 4 years we have a leap year. I think next year will be a leap year where it will be 366 days.
It's divided on 4?
Yeah. You should not have any remainder. Okay, the lunar month. In Islam, this is a very important topic. Understanding what does it mean and the various definitions will help us a lot to understand the confusion and the anxiety that happen every year before the start of the month of Ramadan and deciding on the day of Eid and so on. There are 2 concepts in the lunar months. We have the natural or the astronomical lunar month, and we also have the Islamic lunar month. They're not really different except in some definitions, as we will see shortly. Now, the lunar month rely on the movement of the moon around the sun. So we got the sun is here. We are on the earth looking this way, and the moon is in between. So at the end of a lunar month, we see nothing because we are facing the dark side of the moon. Sorry. Doesn't want to play. There is a video here, but for some reason it's not working. Anyway, there was a video that will show you how the moon revolves around the sun, but unfortunately it didn't play. So basically, at the end of a month, we see nothing. Then, as the moon moves away, part of it starts to receive light, so we start to see a crescent. And then, when the movement continues, we face the lit part of the moon, and that is a full moon, which is the middle of the month. And then it keeps shrinking and eventually disappear. So this cycle repeats every single month. Now, the lunar month can be either 29 or 30 days. It cannot be 28, and it will never be 31. So it's either 29 or 30. This fact is very important, as we will see in a minute.
Is there any exact time for the month rather than 29 or 30?
Yeah, there is. They can give it to you by days, hours, and seconds. Yeah. But this is just a rough number. And as we said, at the end of the month, it is the percentage of the lit part of the moon is 0, so we see nothing, and then it starts to increase every second, and until it becomes a full moon in the middle of the month, and then as we saw that it go back to 0. In Arabic they call it mahaq, which means that it gets burnt, as if it burns because it disappears. we talked about this. We should keep in mind that the astronomical birth or the astronomical start of the month is that when a very small percentage of the moon get lit, and that can be like basically a few minutes old, and this is very important. When the astronomical month is born, it is not visible, so it cannot be seen by the eye. And because those movements are so precise, the astronomers can calculate the exact second, not minute, the exact second or even fraction of a second where the new moon is born. But we need to keep in mind that at that moment the moon is not visible. So this is what we mean by the astronomical or natural lunar month. What about the lunar month from an Islamic perspective? What's the difference between the Islamic and astronomical lunar months? The difference is actually in the definition or in defining the beginning of the lunar month. That's what makes all the difference. There is an ayah, it's a very important ayah in this regard. It's talking about the month of Ramadan. So it says, so whoever sights the new moon, the month, let him fast it. So the word sight, or shahida in Arabic, this is the crucial part of the definition that makes the difference between the Islamic month and the astronomical month. It has to be visible. And as you remember, we said that when the natural lunar months start, the moon is not visible actually. So what makes the moon visible? What are the factors that affect the visibility of the moon? The age of the moon. The older the moon, the easier it's seen. As we saw that, like in the middle of the month, in the full moon, it's very easily visible. While if it is 1 hour old, it's pretty much invisible. The percentage of the lit part of the moon, again, the larger the percentage lit by the larger percentage of the surface of the moon that is lit, the easier it is to be seen. The height above the horizon, the higher, the easier, and the lower, like the closer to the horizon, the more difficult to see. The angle between the moon and the sun, they call it the bearing. That can affect the visibility. The moon is just like the sun. Just like the sun rises and sets, the moon again, the moon also rises and sets. So if the moon sets before the sun, obviously it will not be visible because the sunlight is too powerful and it will cover the moon. So the sun has to set before the moon for any chance for us to be able to see the new moon. And the other factor is the length of time the moon stays above the horizon after sunset. So if it's, say, the sun sets now and the moon sets a minute later, so that's a very short period of time, nobody will be able to see it. Adding to all these intrinsic factors, there are some external factors like clouds, dust, and smoke, and also your position, like your geographical position on Earth, will affect the visibility. Some areas are better, they have a better chance of seeing the new moon than others. So again, it depends on where you live on Earth. If we take the combination of all these factors each month, we end up with countless, with endless sort of possibilities. So that's what makes the problem, that's the source of the difficulty, and that's the challenge. Not only that, but also the same factor this month doesn't guarantee that it will operate the same way the following month. For example, if this month I was able to see the moon when it was 8 hours old, there's no guarantee that any month that's 8 hours old can be seen because of all the other factors. So you cannot rely that, okay, I saw the month today when it was 8 or 9 hours old, then next month, if it is 8 or 9 hours old, I don't have to watch it. I can calculate it, and if it's 9 hours, then it is visible. No, each month is specific to that month. So all this create the challenge of seeing the moon and subsequently declaring a beginning of an Islamic or a Hijri month. Okay. So all our maraja agree that you have to see the moon for the start of the month. But there's some added layer of complexity, and it depends on these factors. Some maraja say it's okay to see it with what they call it assisted eye, like with a telescope. Some say no, you have to see it with your naked eye. Let's see what these terms mean. Of course, naked eye means naked eye. It means that you should not be using binoculars or telescopes. Glasses are okay, but anything that's of any degree of magnification should not be used. While other maraja say, no, it's okay to use telescopes, it's okay to use binoculars, and so on. So it's different. This term is very important, common horizon. And as you can see, as you predicted, there are two definitions for common horizon. What is meant by common horizon? Common horizon is a term used to indicate that if two places share a common horizon, then seeing the moon in one place is equivalent to seeing it in the other place. Most of the maraja say that if two places share a minimum of 15 minutes of night, then moon sighting in one of the two places is enough for the other place to start their month. There are apps that show you the day and night cycle. I'm not sure if it's showing. So this is night, then day, then another night. If we look here, for example, in this example, this is Australia. It is sharing the night with parts of India, China, Malaysia, Japan, and so on. There are apps where you can give it the date and time, and it will give you the map for that day. And the night will move, and as you can see, for example, in this set, like in this date, Australia is sharing the night with the whole of Africa, with the Middle East, with parts of Europe. And then on another, so these are not fixed. They change depend on the date. For example, now the western part of Australia is sharing the night with the eastern parts of South America. And so we have the majority of our ulama say, if you share the night with another place by 15 minutes or more, then it's okay to, for example, in this example, if a new moon was sighted in the eastern part of South America, then western part of Australia, like Perth will be somewhere here, then those people can rely on the sighting there. So that's the utility of this type of opinion or fatwa. Okay, so you can there are apps that give you those maps, and you can use them to see. There is another opinion, or there's another definition of common horizon, and probably it's just Sayyid Sistani, Hafidhahullah, used this term in this way. he makes it very limited. He say to have a common horizon with another place, it should not be more than 2 degrees away from you based on the latitudes. So if you look at maps, we've got the longitudes, which are these longitudinal lines, and we've got the latitudes, which are the horizontal lines. So according to Imam Sistani, he said that for 2 places to share a common horizon, they should not be distant by more than 2 degrees. For example, look here. Melbourne is 38 degrees, Sydney is 34, Adelaide is 35. What does this mean? That means if the moon was sighted in Melbourne, Sydney cannot rely on that sighting and Adelaide cannot, because Sydney is 4 degrees less than, like the difference between Melbourne and Sydney is 4 degrees, not 2, and Adelaide the same, like 3 degrees. So Melbourne cannot rely on Sydney on Adelaide, and Adelaide and Sydney cannot rely on Melbourne. But the difference between Adelaide and Sydney is only 1 degree, which means that if it was seen in Sydney, then Adelaide can follow, or the other way around. If it's seen in Adelaide, Sydney can follow.
You mean the horizontal or the vertical horizon?
No, the horizontal. You see, so these are the horizontal, they call them the latitudes. So based on and of course there are some finer, he also Said Sistani adds the distance as well. So these things need to be taken in consideration. I'm here just like relaying the opinion of the Maraja. We're not putting judgments on any, we're not trying to say who's right and who's wrong. It's as simple as that. You follow what your Marja says, but you need to understand what they are saying. Okay, so these are the definitions of the difference between the naked eye and the assisted eye, the common horizon, and so on. Now, if this is not enough, there is another factor that can add to the diversion in opinion. And this is visible or seeable. Because imagine if the moon is big enough, but there is a cloud. So the moon is there, but you cannot see it. So it is visible, but not seeable, because for whatever reason this is. The way that this translates is, you remember this, we said that the things that, the characteristics of a moon that makes it visible, the age, the percentage of the surface lit, the height, and so on. All these factors that we talked about earlier on dictate whether a new moon is visible or not. So scientists try to use accumulated observational data and scientific equations, and what they try to do, they try to predict the visibility of the new moon. What does that mean? They apply the equations and the previous data, and then they say, okay, if the age is that many hours and the percentage is that much percentage lit, they give a figure and the degree above the horizon and so on, and this of course variable, and it has always to be like it sets after the sun. They say, okay, if any moon fulfills these criteria, then it will be seeable, which means that it is seeable, but not necessarily anybody observe it. So that's what we term, like they rely on calculation. So they just use this knowledge and apply it to any particular month and say, okay, on such and such day, the new moon should be seeable. Whether somebody see it or not, that's a different thing. To them, they say, okay, it is seeable, and if somebody take the trouble to look for it, they will see it.
So what do you mean by scientists try to use? Which scientists? Islamic scientists or astronomical scientists?
No, this is astronomy. This is astronomy. There's no religious science behind it. It is pure science.
Pure science.
Yeah. Okay. And that's how you, like whoever rely on this opinion, like said Fadlallah and some other maraja, they say, okay, that way you can know well ahead of time when the new moon will happen, because you can calculate, as we said, the movement of the sun and the moon and the earth is so precise. Subhanallah, these huge planets, they move in such precision that you can calculate it to the fraction of the second. So the maraji' who approve this way of confirming the beginning of the month, they can give you tell you 100 years ahead when each month will start. But of course, we said that. Yes, so some maraja accept this concept and apply it. Some wouldn't. So now we understand why we can, like, why we differ. Like, you can look into, there's always, if you buy a newspaper, you'll find the phases of the moon, they call it. They tell you when is the moon born, the quarter, the half, like the full moon, and the 3 quarters, and the end. Why we, from Islamic point of view, we cannot rely on it because of all these differences that we talked about. All right. I know that this might be too much to digest, but if you have any questions, we'll try and address them at the end of the session. One more definition is the day of uncertainty, Yawm al-Shak. What is meant? You probably hear this term a lot, especially looking for the beginning of the month of Ramadan and for the Eid and so on. So, as we said, the lunar month can be either 29 or 30. Okay, and it's not like it is not specific to a month. Like Muharram can be 29 days this year and can be 30 days the following year. So it's not like the Gregorian. Every July will be 31 days. So it's different. So any month can be 29 or 30 from year to year. So it's nothing fixed. So any lunar month can be either 29 or 30 days. So let's say the last day in the month, not the last, let's say the 29th day of a month, the night after it can be either the 30th or the first of the new month, either the 30th of the same month or the first of the new month. And this will obviously depends. If you see the moon, if you see the new moon, then it becomes the first day of the new month. So this day here, or night and day, will be the first of the new month. If you don't see the crescent, then it is the 30th day of the same month. So that's why they call it the day of uncertainty, because until it is settled whether the new moon is sighted or not, we don't know whether it's the 30th of the same month or the first of the new month. So that's why it's called the day of uncertainty. And that's the day where you get the most number of angry messages on social media. Yeah, a lot of debate and discussion and arguments and so on. Anyway, so that's what's meant by the Yawm al-Shak. All right, so we covered what is meant by the astronomical and the Islamic lunar months. Again, a point of interest, there is an ayah in Surah At-Tawbah which talks that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made 12 months. 4 of them are sacred. 4 of the 12 months are sacred. Do we know which months are the sacred months? This is like a quiz. Is it Rabi' al-Awwal, Rabi' al-Thani, Jamad al-Ula, and Jamad al-Thani? Is it Sha'ban, Ramadan, Dhul Hijjah, and Dhul Qa'dah? Is it Dhul Qa'dah, Dhul Hijjah, Muharram, and Rajab? Or is it the month of Ramadan, Dhul Hijjah, Muharram, and Safar? I'll give you a couple.
I'm including in this quiz or not?
No. I'll give you a couple of seconds to think about it. This was designed to be for a live audience.
I think everyone will know this.
No, you'll be surprised. Anyway, I hope that everyone...
No.
Okay, you tell me which one.
3.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so the correct answer is Dhul Qa'dah, Dhul Hijjah, Muharram, and Rajab. And 3 of them are in continuity. They call them Sard, which means one after the other. And Rajab is separate. So that doesn't mean the other months are not sacred or the month of Ramadan is not sacred. That term comes with some religious obligations in those months. I don't want to go into the details of them. So they're called Al-Ashhur al-Hurum. That doesn't mean the other months are worthless or like the month of Ramadan is a very sacred month from spiritually and for us. Just notice that though Rajab is a sacred month, Ramadan in that definition is not considered as a month من الأشهر الحرم. And the same thing with Muharram is of the Ashhur al-Hurum, Safar is not. So this is what the Quran refers to as the Ashhur al-Hurum. Okay, the last thing to conclude this session is the relation of the Hijri to the Gregorian dates. Now, if we make a quick summary or comparison between the Gregorian and the Hijri calendar, as we said, both of them, the Hijri and Gregorian, both of them has 24 hours a day. Both of them have 12 months a year. The length of the month is different. The Gregorian can be 28, 29, 30, or 31, while the lunar can be only 29 or 30. And the year length is different as well. The solar or the Gregorian year is 365 on average, like roughly, while the Hijri year is 354. So it's 11 days shorter. And this is very important. We'll explain a lot of things in relation to this. So let's take like a true example. This year, the 1st of Muharram was on the 9th of August. Next year, inshallah, the 1st of Muharram will be on the 30th of July, which is 11 days behind, like moved backwards from August to July. If we keep looking, after 10 years, it moves from August to April. So we moved from one season to the other. And it will keep creeping back. And in 20 years, it moves from August to April to January. And it takes 32 years or 32 Gregorian years, 32 Hijri, 32 Gregorian years or 33 Hijri years to go back to August. So we started this year in August, 10 years later it was April, 20 years later it was January, and 32 years later it's August. So this explains why the Hijri date is different each year, like the beginning of the month of Ramadan, the Eid is different, or the Hajj is different from year to year, and it's also explain why the season changes. Like now we are fasting Ramadan in sort of in spring. Next, a few years time, we'll be doing it in summer. So that's the reason, because the Hijri year is 11 days shorter than the Gregorian or the solar year. All right, so this is the end of today's talk. Next week, inshallah, we'll be talking about the day and the salat times in relation to the various parts of the day and night. And inshallah, we'll cover this in the next session. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
The most important things in this topic, actually, it's always good, very good, and very important. But the most important things, I think, the visibility of the moon, visible or seeable.
Yeah.
About the factors, I think the most important one is the position of the person who looking at the moon. Can you just go in details in this case?
No, not necessarily. All the factors actually, let me just get that slide. All those factors are important. Can we have the presentation, please? Yeah. All these factors are actually important. And though they look like they are related, like the age and the percentage lit and the height above the horizon, as if they are linked, but they are not. For example, an 8 hours old moon can be 2 degrees above the horizon 1 year or 1 month, and it can be 3 degrees above the horizon. So all these factors actually, they're all very important, and they all play a role in the visibility. It's hard to say that one of them is more important than the other. Probably the only one that make or break is this one, that this one here. If the moon sets before the sun, if the moon sets before the sun, then there is no way on earth that anybody will be able to see it, because by the time the moon disappears under the horizon, the sky is still very bright and nobody will be able to see it. So this is the main factor. So this is the starting point. You check this on the day of uncertainty, you check the time when the moon will be born, and you check when will it set. If it sets before the sun, then no one, if anyone tell you that they saw the moon, we're talking about any particular geographical, like if you can't see it here, that doesn't mean somebody else will not be able to see it somewhere else. We're talking about the same geographical position on Earth. If somebody, if the moon sets before the sun, then nobody will be able to see it in that place. Yeah. But otherwise, all the factors are.
What about the other factor, which is the cloud and the dust and distance, which are also affecting?
Yeah, of course. But they are very important. And in New Zealand and in Australia, it's almost always cloudy, which makes makes it difficult. But these are called external factors. It's not related to the movement. These are external factors, like there's a bushfire, for example, or smoke and so on. But absolutely, this is our main challenge, actually.
Yeah. For the last decades, all the Maraja, and they depend on the moon seeing in South America or most far west. What's the reason for that?
As I said, some places on Earth are easier to see than others. So it seems that most of the time the eastern coast of South America is easier, they got a better chance of seeing it. I'm not sure exactly why, but as I said, your position on the globe make a difference. So for some reason, but that's only if your merger say that it's okay if you share night with them, then you can go by what they say. That depends on what your merger's opinion. For say Sistani, it doesn't mean anything. If you live in the Middle East, or if you live in Africa, in Australia or Europe, South America is of no use for you. Yeah.
Also, I think in the comparison between the astronomical moon and the Islamic moon,
Yeah.
Maraja moon, it's easy to make a base, solid base, regular base, so the followers can depend on it and to define the time of the moon, the start of the month.
No, it all depends on the opinion of your marja. As I said, where were we? As I said, like when we talked about the visibility and the seeability of the moon, if your marja say, for example, Sayyid al-Khu'i, rahmatullah alayh, say you cannot go by calculation, as simple as that, full stop. Say Shaykh Muhammad Baqir al-Sadr say you cannot. I think al-Khamenei say it's okay to go by calculation. Sayyid Fadlallah, I think, say it's okay to go by calculation, but it all depends on the opinion of your marja. What you are saying is what is done here. They say, okay, they come up with a equation for how many hours old and what's the percentage and so on. So they put the various figures for that particular month in the equation, and they come up with a conclusion whether it's seeable or not. And for the Maraja that approve this method, nobody need to bother to go and watch the moon. You just rely on the calculation and you just go by it. But from personal experience, it's a very pleasant experience to go and watch the moon. Seeing the moon, I don't know, it may be my generation, I don't know. It gives you that happiness that it's a very pleasant, especially the moon of the Eid, you know, the moon of Shawwal, the beginning of Shawwal.
Which is the most important thing.
Yeah.
Everyone passing on.
Yeah. So it's and it is a mustahab thing to go and observe the moon, the new moon.
If we refer to Quran about the ayah we mentioned about فَمَنْ شَهِدَ مِنْكُمُ الشَّهْرَ فَلْيَصُمْ.
No.
The word shahida in Arabic,
Yeah, I know.
as you know, and all my brothers and sisters, they know, it had a lot of meaning actually. That's, I think, make the ulama have different opinions.
Yeah.
So it can be,
Yeah.
some meanings.
Yeah, some say shahida mean being in the shahida, like you live to see it.
Yeah.
As we say, like in English, I'm not sure whether I'll live to see it. So in Arabic, shahida, it all depends on what your marja, how your marja interpret this ayah. And maraja being different in their way of thinking, that's why they are different in how they understand various evidence.
Okay, even though whatever they have difference in their opinions, but I think there is no big difference in defining what is the first day of the month, not more than 1 day or 2 days. But sometimes there are some countries or some groups of people take 2 days to start the month. How you can explain that?
Rarely. I mean, as I said, I'm not here to pass judgments, but from how many, like 6 decades of experience, it's usually 1 day, rarely 2 days. And it's all based on these differences on opinion. Are there a way for people to ask?
Yeah, they will ask.
Yeah, but
Dr. Akeel, if there's any question, please.
Because we promised the audience that there will be. Huh?
There's no
Okay.
question.
All right.
Okay,
So
then you can
another questions. I think this mostly we are talking about Ramadan.
Yeah,
Ramadan.
yeah, and of
Yeah.
course, yeah, and Shawwal.
There is a lot of debates, as you know, every year, and every year this debate escalated and escalated.
Yeah.
But the most important things, there is some interference of political, social, economical, all these interfere with to defining the.
I'm talking from pure.
That day.
Our Maraja doesn't pay any doesn't give
Yeah,
any weight to all
these
these.
things.
It's pure because this is our responsibility in the front of Allah Subhanahu wa Taala. If somebody say, okay, tomorrow is not the first day of Ramadan, and people will break their will be eating on that day. Well, it's actually Ramadan. That's a big thing. And the same thing at the end of the month of Ramadan. If they say, okay, tomorrow is Eid, and it is not Eid, or if let's say tomorrow is the continuation of the 30th of the month of Ramadan, and well, it is Eid. So this is a big, huge responsibility. So nobody with the least amount of responsibility will bypass this for political, economical, or whatever social. I mean, this is not on.
Even historical or narrations about narrations. There is in some narrations there is a base how you calculate the first day of the month or mostly of Ramadan. Like if for example, which is this narration is not dependable. If you know the date of the first day of Rajab, you will know the first day of Ramadan. And
I mean,
the ulama don't take this
yeah,
seriously.
yeah. I mean, if you take it in reverse,
purely scientific.
no, it's not even scientific. It's,
no, I mean the ulama, purely scientific.
Like,
whatever the opinion.
Because ulama, like our maraja, well, by say ulama, I mean our scholars, they will follow any evidence, that they are confident that it is reliable. So if these riwayat were reliable, they would have used it and would have given peace of mind to a lot of people, but obviously it is not reliable.
Yeah, but according to these opinions you mentioned about naked eye, assisted eye, common horizontal, which is two types, all makes sense for everyone actually. It is not.
But they are conflicting. Like how?
Yeah, conflicting, but it makes sense if I'm satisfying with anyone. I'm satisfying with all of them.
I should say that we should it's not our personal opinion, it is basically our marja opinion what counts.
I know,
Yeah.
but if you look at the fatwa seriously, you look at it sensible, it makes sense. It is
well, the fact that it's contradicting, like one marja say, okay, tomorrow is the first of Ramadan, and another marja say, no, tomorrow is the 30th of Sha'ban.
But have a reason. He has a reason.
Yeah, but that's where people start to question, okay, it is only one month, it is one hilal, how come that they are defining it differently? But we should not go into that debate. Look to what your marja rules are and just follow them, and you should be fine.
I think it is the same thing like in other ways of life. For example, as we are doctors, someone can do appendectomy in old fashion,
right, yeah.
Someone do it in new fashion.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it is just a way of...
in English they said there's more than one way to skin a cat. I'm not sure why they want to skin a cat, but they always say there's more than one way to skin a cat.
Yeah. There is a lot of ways, but all of them, they do the same thing, and accurate things.
Yeah. Yeah, as we said, we should not be judging. I mean, if you got a question, you can ask the marja directly. No one is closest to their followers than our maraja, and it is very easy to send a question, and then you get the answer, and then you follow on with another question on the same topic, and they will answer, and you can keep bouncing. So if you got instead of talking sideways, just go straight to the marja and send the question there, and they will answer. I've tried it so many times. At the most difficult time when the maraja were under siege and it was not easy to get to them, where the internet was very non-existent, rely on fax machines and phone calls and so on.
All right. So, is there any questions, Dr. Akeel? No more questions?
Okay, then.
That's good conversation with Dr. Aasar tonight, and good lecture. I hope everyone get benefit from it. So thank you very much, Dr. Aasar.
You're welcome.
Thank you for the staff. Thank you for everyone attend this discussion. Thank you very much. We'll see you next week. Thank you very much.
Inshallah. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
مع السلامة.